Hello everyone, Mrs. Horn here. I have some information for the second part of chapter 38, and this part of the chapter is all about asexual reproduction of plants and different techniques that we have to clone plants, and then we'll move into biotechnology and things that scientists are doing for genetically modified plants, and good things, positive things about it, and then talk about a few unknowns. So let's get started. Plants can clone themselves. There are a few different ways that this can happen. This is when the offspring come from a single parent plant. It's very common in angiosperms, or the flowering plants. Fragmentation is when a parent plant separates into different parts, and then those parts will develop into whole plants. I have a picture here on the next slide, which you don't have, but all of these are aspen trees, and the trees that are all of the same color are considered an aspen grove, and they are all they're changing colors all at different times because they are slightly different DNA. All of these yellow trees here are considered one grove because they're all clones from the original aspen tree, which that tree divided into different parts, and then those parts started to grow new trees. All clones of each other, no seed involved, no new planting of a tree. But then the orange trees are of a different grove, and they're all changing color at the same time because they have the same DNA. And the other method is apomixis, and this is when a plant produces seeds without pollination. So no fertilization, no pollinating required. Dandelions are a great example of a plant that can do this. Some plants reproduce asexually and some sexually, and I have listed some factors of both. Both have their benefits, but both have their downfalls. So the asexual reproduction, this allows plants to pass on all of their genetics, and if they live in a very stable, unchanging environment, then those new plants, they will flourish. They have proven to have seedlings that are generally stronger than seedlings that are produced from sexual reproduction. However, those seedlings have a higher risk of local extinction because if the weather is changing, or a parasite or a pathogen has been introduced into that area, and they're all the same, they're all going to be affected negatively. Plants that reproduce through sexual reproduction naturally create a greater variety in the offspring, and this is very helpful when the environment changes, climate changes, if it's unstable. With the different genetics, you have some that are able to carry on. Vegetative propagation is when you take part of a plant to make a new plant, but this is not a natural process. So this is a process that you have to go and cut part of a plant off to make the new one. The first one is called a cutting, and you can clone a plant from a cutting. This is very common in house plants. The plant that I have hanging in the room, when I took those stems off of there to use for the transpiration lab, I could have taken that whole stem and put it in some water. Over the next couple of weeks, we could watch some roots grow right out of it. They would be a clone of the original, but that stem, that would be considered the cutting. And the cutting for other plants could be the shoot, like the one I have in here, or a plant like an African violet. You can actually just use its leaf. You don't need the whole stem. You can just cut a leaf off, and you can stick the leaf right in some fresh new soil, and that leaf will grow a whole new African violet plant. Another technique is called grafting. Grafting uses the twig or a stem from one plant and grafts it onto another plant. The benefit of this is that it takes the best qualities of both plants. Apple trees are commonly done by this. This is how we get lots of new varieties of apples. grape vines they do this with. I found a quick video online that will walk us through the grafting process. What they're doing is they're going to graft a rose plant. They found a branch that they want to graft onto. They're going to cut a V-notch in it. They've also selected a branch of another variety of a rose plant. This is the top. This will be the top part of the graft. This will be the variety that they've selected. They had to pick a stem that was about the same diameter of the bottom part, and then they cut it so that it would fit right into the notch. They inserted it into the V-notch, and then they're going to wrap a string or a rope or some kind of a plant tie around it to hold that in place. And then over time, those plant materials will grow together, they will repair itself, cells will divide by mitosis, and if you watch, as time goes on, that rose starts to grow out of there. Other types of plants have been new varieties of plants have come about a couple different ways. Naturally, they have changed over time simply by mutating. We've also made new varieties of plants by selectively breeding the ones that we want. And then now most recently we are creating genetically modified plants, which we create with very specific qualities that were designed by altering their DNA. Using biotechnology, we have been able to make some improvements with our agriculture. We've been able to create crops that are resistant to herbicides and pathogens. Farmers want to put herbicides on their crops to eliminate any weeds that grow in the fields. The problem is that herbicides also affect their crop at times. Well, now we can make them resistant to the herbicides, so we can put all kinds of herbicides on them so the weeds won't grow and all of the crop gets all of the nutrients from the soil. Pathogens, bacteria, fungus, parasites that will infect and eat plants, we can now make them resistant to those things. There are some plants we've modified so that they actually repel those pathogens. And biotechnology has allowed us to increase the nutritional quality of a plant. They have been able to take genes from a daffodil plant, the gene that makes vitamin A, and they've inserted it into rice. So now we can grow rice that is very rich in vitamin A. There is a debate. Are we doing the right thing? There are a lot of unknown risks that we could be altering the environment in some way, and it hasn't been around long enough for us to determine if that's a good or a bad thing. We don't know how it's going to affect human health. And then there's the question, well, now that we've started to change these things, are we able to stop? Are we able to go back? And a lot of people think that it's just going to continue to propel into other things. So that finishes up the notes for chapter 38, and I hope this helps.